The first time my own child told me to stay away, my hands didn't shake. That surprised me. I was standing in my kitchen, barefoot on cold tile, coffee going bitter in a chipped blue mug I'd had since the 90s. My phone buzzed once on the counter. One message, short, clean, like it had been practiced. Please don't come by this weekend, we need space. No love you, no explanation, no call, just space. I stared at the screen longer than I should have. Then I laughed, not loud, just a soft breath through my nose, the kind you let out when something finally makes sense in a way you didn't want it to. Because see, I already knew something was wrong. I'm 62 years old, black woman. Raised my child with my hands, my back, and a whole lot of prayers, I whispered when nobody was listening. I've cleaned offices after midnight, worn shoes till the soles talked back, and stretched one pot of food into miracles. Life has tested me before, hard, but betrayal, that one still hits different. My son Marcus used to call me every Sunday like clockwork, didn't matter where he was or who he was with. Sunday afternoon, my phone rang. That was our thing until it wasn't. The calls slowed, then stopped. When I did hear from him, his voice sounded tight, like someone else was in the room, like every word had to pass inspection before it came out. And then there was her. I won't say her name yet. Names give power, and she hadn't earned that from me. All I knew was this: the warmth in my son's voice had cooled, and every time I tried to step closer, I felt an invisible hand pushing me back. Still, I never imagined he'd tell me not to come, especially not like that. I picked up my mug, took a sip, and winced. Burnt. I set it down, walked to the window, and looked out at the quiet street. Same houses, same trees. Same world, but something inside me shifted, because what Marcus didn't know, what he clearly had forgotten, was that space has a price, and boundaries go both ways. That weekend he didn't want me around. I had plans too, not revenge. I'm too old for that kind of mess. But clarity, oh, clarity was coming. I grabbed my sweater, slipped on my shoes, and checked my reflection by the door. Lines on my face, gray at my temples. Eyes that had seen too much to be fooled by silence pretending to be peace. All right, I said out loud to nobody. Let's see what this is really about. Because when a child you raised suddenly decides you're inconvenient, it's never just about space. It's about control, about rewriting history, about forgetting who laid the foundation they're standing on. And the thing about foundations, they don't disappear just because you stop acknowledging them. They hold everything up whether you respect them or not. I locked my door behind me, not knowing yet that this was the last calm moment before everything I thought I knew about my family cracked wide open. I didn't drive to Marcus's place that day. That was the first test I gave myself. Old me would have gone straight over, knocked on the door, asked what I did wrong, apologized for things I didn't even understand yet. Old me believed love meant bending until you broke, but I've learned something in my 60s. Silence can be louder than begging, so instead I went about my day like everything was normal: grocery store, post office. Back home before sunset, I folded laundry that didn't need folding and watered plants that weren't thirsty. My mind kept circling back, though, not to the text itself, but to how easily it had been sent. That kind of message doesn't come from nowhere. 3 years earlier, when Marcus got married, I was proud. Nervous, too, but proud. He looked grown standing at the altar, shoulders back, smile tight with emotion. I remember thinking, I did my job, I raised a man. When they talked about finding a place, I helped. Not because they asked, because that's what mothers do when they can. I didn't announce it or make a show. Just signed papers quietly and told them to focus on building their life. Family helps family, that's how I was raised. For a while, things felt good. Dinner invites, group texts, laughing like we used to. His wife called me Mama with a smile that reached her mouth but never quite made it to her eyes. I noticed that early, even if I didn't name it. Then little things shifted. I'd call Marcus and she'd answer. He's busy. I'd ask to come by and there was always a reason. It's not a good time. I'd suggest dinner and get a polite delay. Maybe next week. Next week never came. That evening my phone rang. Marcus's name flashed on the screen, and for a split second my chest lifted. "Hey Mom," he said. His voice was soft, careful. "Hey baby." I leaned against the counter. "You all right?" A pause, too long. "Yeah, just tired." "Work's been a lot?" I knew that tone, the one he used as a teenager when he didn't want to tell me something. Back then I could pull the truth out of him with a look. Now there was distance in the line. "I got your message," I said gently. About needing space. Another pause, then a breath. It's just what we need right now. That word landed heavy. I didn't argue, didn't push, just said, okay. He sounded relieved. That hurt more than the text. After we hung up, I sat down slowly, like my knees had suddenly aged 10 years. Something wasn't right, not just with him, with the whole situation. And the more I thought about it, the clearer one truth became. This wasn't about me showing up uninvited. This was about someone deciding I didn't belong anymore. And the problem with that, nobody erases me from a story I helped write. Not quietly, not politely. And definitely not without a conversation. That night, sleep didn't come easy. I lay in the dark listening to the hum of the house, wondering when my son stopped recognizing the sound of my voice as home. And somewhere deep in my chest, a slow, steady resolve began to form. If distance was what they wanted, then distance was exactly where the truth would surface. 2 days passed without another word from Marcus. That alone told me more than any explanation ever could. By the third morning, I woke up with that familiar heaviness behind my ribs, the kind that doesn't hurt sharp, just dull and constant, like something pressing inward. I made breakfast out of habit even though I wasn't hungry. Toast burned, eggs sat untouched. I kept thinking about the last time I'd been inside their place, how different it felt. Furniture arranged just a little too perfectly. No family photos on the walls anymore. The picture of Marcus and me at his college graduation gone. In its place, abstract art I didn't recognize. Cold colors, clean lines, no warmth. I remembered standing there that day, holding my purse close, feeling like a guest instead of a mother. That's when it hit me. I hadn't been invited in a long time. I'd been allowed. There's a difference. That afternoon, I decided to do something simple, something quiet. I drove past the building, didn't stop, didn't park, just slowed down enough to look up at the windows. Curtains drawn, lights on in the middle of the day. Life happening without me in it. And for the first time, anger flickered under the sadness. Not rage, not yet, but a question formed in my mind, sharp and steady. How did I become the outsider in a place I helped create? My phone buzzed later that evening. A message, not from Marcus, from her. Please respect our boundaries. That was it. No greeting, no warmth, just a line drawn like I was a problem to manage. I stared at the words until the screen dimmed. Boundaries? People love that word when they want control without accountability. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Inside were folders, old paperwork, receipts, documents I kept because I was raised to never throw away anything important. I wasn't looking for anything specific at first, but my hands knew where to go. When I found the folder, I sat very still. Inside were copies, deeds, statements, signatures in black ink that hadn't faded with time, my name. Only my name. I felt something steady settle over me then, not satisfaction, not triumph, clarity. They were setting rules in a space that was never fully theirs, acting grown in a house built on my sacrifice. Asking for distance while standing on ground I paid for. I closed the folder and slid it back into the drawer. This wasn't about money, and it wasn't about pride. It was about respect. And respect, once lost, doesn't come back through silence. It comes through truth. That night, I finally replied, not to her but to Marcus. We need to talk, in person. I didn't add emojis, didn't soften it. Because some conversations aren't meant to be gentle, some are meant to wake people up. I didn't know yet what I would say when we finally sat across from each other. I only knew one thing for sure. Whatever had been building in the dark was about to step into the light, and once it did, there would be no going back to the way things were before. Marcus didn't respond right away. That told me plenty. When he finally did, it was short. Tomorrow, early, no apology, no questions, just a time. I woke up before my alarm the next morning, nerves buzzing under my skin. I cleaned the house even though it was already clean, wiped counters twice. Straightened pillows that hadn't moved, not because I expected company, but because I needed my hands busy. He arrived just after 9. I watched from the window as he parked, sat in the car a moment too long, then stepped out. He looked thinner, shoulders slouched. The confidence he used to carry had been replaced with something heavier. Guilt, maybe. I opened the door before he knocked. "Hey, Mom," he said. "Come in." We sat at the kitchen table like we used to when he was a kid and got in trouble at school. Same chairs, same table, different energy. He didn't meet my eyes at first. "I know things feel weird right now," he started. "Weird is when the cable goes out," I said calmly. "This is something else." he sighed. We're just trying to build our own life. And where do I fit into that? I asked, not accusing, just honest. He rubbed his face. It's complicated. It always is when someone else is doing the talking for you. That made him look up. She's just trying to protect our marriage. I nodded slowly. From me, he didn't answer. That silence landed harder than words. I stood, walked to the drawer and pulled out the folder, set it on the table between us. Didn't open it yet. Do you remember when I told you I'd always have your back? I asked. Of course, this is me having it now. I opened the folder, one page, clean, clear. He leaned forward reading, his brow furrowed, then his eyes widened just slightly. Mom, why are you showing me this? Because you're setting rules in a space that doesn't belong to you the way you think it does. He sat back, stunned. You never said I didn't need to, I said gently. I trusted you, he swallowed hard. I never meant to push you away, but you did, I replied, and not once did you stop it. His jaw tightened. She feels like you don't respect her. I almost laughed, almost. Respect isn't silence, Marcus. Respect is truth. The room felt thick, heavy. He stood abruptly. I need time. I nodded. That's fine. As he walked out, he paused at the door. Mom, yes, this isn't how I wanted things to be. I watched him leave, heart steady, mind clear. Me neither, I whispered, but deep down I knew something had shifted, and whatever came next, it wasn't going to be quiet. The quiet after Marcus left wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. I sat at the table long after the door closed, staring at the grain in the wood like it might offer answers. My coffee had gone cold again. I didn't touch it. Some things don't deserve reheating. I knew what was coming next. When a person realizes control is slipping, they don't reflect first. They react. That evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered anyway. Why are you doing this? Her voice snapped, sharp and tight. No greeting, no pretending. I'm protecting myself, I said evenly. You're trying to embarrass us. You're trying to scare Marcus. I didn't raise my son to be scared of truth. She laughed, but it wasn't humor. It was brittle. You don't get to dictate our life, and you don't get to erase me from it. Silence, then softer, calculated. You know this will hurt him. I closed my eyes. There it was, the leverage, the guilt weaponized. He's already hurting, I said. That didn't start with me. Her tone shifted, sweet, almost pleading. We just want peace. No, I replied. You want control that looks like peace. She hung up. 2 days later, Marcus texted. We need to talk again, all three of us. I stared at the message a long time before replying. No, just you. That answer didn't go over well. By the end of the week, whispers reached me. Mutual friends asking questions they didn't ask directly, a cousin calling to check in. Stories had started circulating, half-truths dressed as concern. I was being framed as difficult, cold, unreasonable. That's when I understood something important. This wasn't just emotional distance anymore. This was strategy. So I made a call of my own, not to family, not to friends, to someone who dealt in facts. I sat across from her 2 days later, a woman with sharp eyes and a voice that didn't waste words. She listened, took notes, didn't interrupt. When I finished, she leaned back. You did the right thing coming early, she said. This situation, it escalates fast if you don't get ahead of it. Escalates how? She met my gaze. People who feel entitled don't let go quietly. I nodded. I already knew that in my bones. As I left her office, the air felt heavier, but I felt lighter, prepared, grounded. That night I slept deeper than I had in weeks, because for the first time since that message arrived, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was choosing. And when someone like me starts choosing, the story changes. The shift didn't happen all at once. It came in pieces. A look Marcus gave me the next time we spoke. The way his voice cracked when he said my name. The silence that followed questions he didn't want to answer. A week after that phone call, he showed up again, unannounced this time. I knew it was him before I opened the door. Same knock he used when he was little. 3 taps, pause, 2 more, muscle memory. He looked exhausted. Can I come in? He asked. I stepped aside. He didn't sit right away, just paced my living room, hands in his pockets, eyes landing everywhere except my face. She says you're trying to ruin our marriage, he finally said. I nodded slowly. And what do you think? I don't know anymore, he admitted. Everything feels off. That word again, off. I gestured to the couch. Sit. He did. Marcus, I said gently, when did you stop trusting your own instincts? He flinched. She says I'm too close to you. I breathed out through my nose. I'm your mother. I know, he said quickly. I know, but every time I try to defend you, it turns into a fight. She cries, says I don't prioritize her. Says I'm choosing you over her, and what do you do? He looked down. I try to keep the peace. I reached over and placed my hand on his knee just like I used to when he was overwhelmed as a boy. Peace built on silence isn't peace, I said, it's fear. His eyes filled before he could stop it. I feel like I'm failing everyone, he whispered. You're failing yourself, I replied softly. And that's the hardest one to recover from, he swallowed. What do you want from me, Mom? I thought about that carefully. I want honesty, I want respect, and I want you to stop letting someone convince you that loving your mother is a betrayal. He nodded slowly like something inside him was finally clicking. I didn't realize how far things had gone, he said. Not until I read those papers. They weren't meant to threaten you, I said. They were meant to wake you up. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling. She's not going to like this, he said. I gave a small, sad smile. People who rely on control never do. When he left that evening, I felt it again, that shift, subtle but undeniable. Something in him was waking up. And somewhere else, I knew someone was already planning her next move. The calm didn't last. It never does when someone realizes they're losing their grip. 3 days after Marcus left my house, my phone started lighting up like a warning signal. Missed calls, messages from numbers I didn't recognize, long pauses between vibrations like whoever was behind it was pacing, deciding how hard to push next. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat on my back porch, wrapped in a blanket, watching the wind move through the trees. I'd learned a long time ago that reacting too fast only feeds the fire. Silence, used correctly, can drain it. That evening, Marcus texted. She wants to meet, says she wants to apologize. I closed my eyes. There it was, the pivot. When anger doesn't work, manipulation changes costumes. Soft voice, tears, promises. The performance of accountability without any intention of change. I typed back slowly. I'm not ready for that. His response came quick. She's really upset, Mom. She says she feels misunderstood. I set the phone down and let it sit. My chest felt tight, but my mind was clear. I'd been misunderstood my whole life. At work, in relationships, in rooms where my voice was labeled too much just because it was firm. I wasn't interested in explaining myself again. The next morning, a letter arrived in my mailbox. Not an email, not a text, a letter, handwritten. That alone told me everything. Inside were careful words, rounded letters, phrases like family, healing, moving forward. An apology that never quite landed anywhere solid. No specifics, no ownership, just emotion floating without responsibility. At the bottom was her signature, big, confident, like she'd already decided how this would end. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back in the envelope. Then I did something I hadn't done yet. I drove over, not to confront, not to argue, to observe. I sat across the street, engine off, watching the building. Watching who came and went, watching patterns. Power doesn't always look loud, sometimes it looks strategic. Later that day, Marcus called. She's been crying nonstop, he said. Says she feels attacked. Does she feel accountable? I asked. Silence. I didn't think so, I continued gently. He exhaled hard. I don't know who to believe anymore. You don't have to believe anyone, I said. Just pay attention. Another pause. I'm scared, he admitted quietly. I know, I replied, but fear isn't a reason to ignore the truth. That night I sat at my table and opened my notebook, wrote dates, conversations, patterns. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. Because when things turn messy and they were already heading that way, clarity becomes protection, and deep down I felt it. The apology was just the opening act. The real confrontation was still coming. And when it arrived, it wouldn't be gentle. The confrontation didn't arrive loud, it arrived calculated. 2 mornings later, Marcus called before I'd even finished my tea. His voice was tight, like he'd been holding his breath all night. She knows you've been keeping records, he said. I didn't ask how she knew. I already had my answer. Of course she does, I replied calmly. People who move carefully always notice when someone else starts doing the same. She thinks you're building a case against her. I'm building clarity, I said. If she's uncomfortable with that, she should ask herself why. He didn't respond right away. She wants to talk today, he said finally. At your place, says she needs to clear the air. I closed my eyes for a moment. This was no longer about feelings, this was about control being challenged. Fine, I said, but you'll be here and the door stays open. They arrived together that afternoon. She walked in first, shoulders back, face soft, eyes already glossy. Marcus followed a step behind like a shadow unsure where to land. I just want us to heal, she began, hands clasped, voice trembling just enough to sound sincere. This tension, it's tearing Marcus apart. I watched her closely, no tears yet, too early for that. He's a grown man, I said. He's capable of handling truth. Her jaw tightened for half a second before she caught it. I've tried so hard to be respectful, she said, but I always feel judged. Accountability can feel like judgment, I replied. Marcus shifted uncomfortably. She turned to him quickly. See. This is what I mean. I held up my hand. No triangulating. If you're speaking, speak to me. That's when her tone changed, subtle, sharp. You don't like that you're not the center of his life anymore, she said. The room went still. Marcus looked at her, stunned. Why would you say that? Because it's true, she snapped, then quickly softened. I mean, you said it, I interrupted. Say it again. She didn't. I leaned back in my chair. This isn't about love. It's about ownership. You want exclusive access to his loyalty, and I don't play that game. Her face flushed. You're twisting everything. No, I said quietly. I'm naming it. She stood abruptly. You're trying to turn him against me. I looked at my son. Am I? He hesitated. That hesitation told her everything. Her eyes filled not with sadness but rage she barely contained. This is unfair, she said. You're destroying our marriage. Marcus stood up then. No, he said slowly. What's destroying it is the pressure, the lies, the way you make me feel like I'm choosing sides instead of just being myself. She stared at him like she'd never seen him before. Because for the first time, he wasn't afraid. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. You'll regret this, she said, voice low. I met her gaze without blinking. Only people who lose control say that. The door slammed behind her. Marcus sat back down, hands shaking. I don't know what happens next, he said. I reached for his hand. Neither do I replied. But whatever it is, it's finally honest. And honesty, once spoken out loud, has a way of changing everything that follows. The house felt different after she left. Not lighter, clearer. Marcus stayed sitting at the table long after the door slammed, staring at the same spot like something had cracked open there. His hands were still shaking, not from fear anymore, but from release. I didn't know I could talk back, he said quietly. I didn't smile. This wasn't a victory moment. You always could, I told him. You were just taught not to, he nodded slowly. She keeps saying I owe her loyalty, that marriage means choosing her no matter what. Marriage isn't ownership, I said. And love that demands silence isn't love, it's management. He rubbed his face. I feel stupid. Don't, I replied. Manipulation works best on good people who want peace. That word again, peace. He stayed for dinner that night. We didn't talk much, didn't need to. Sometimes healing starts with shared quiet, not explanations. When he left, he hugged me longer than usual. I'm scared of what she'll do next, he admitted. So am I said honestly. That's why we stay grounded in truth. The next few days were tense. Marcus didn't go home, stayed with a friend, said he needed space to think. She sent messages, long ones, then short ones, then angry ones. When those didn't work, she went silent. That silence was louder than anything else. Then the rumors started shifting. Instead of cruel mother, the story became troubled marriage. Instead of unreasonable interference, it was serious issues behind closed doors. Truth has weight. Once it starts moving, it changes the air around it. Marcus came by one evening, eyes tired but steady. I checked the paperwork again, he said. Really looked at it this time. I waited. She never planned for us to be equal, he continued. Everything was always about leverage, who had more power, who could push harder. I nodded. That's why accountability scared her, he exhaled. I think she was counting on me never standing up. Most people do, I said gently. He looked at me then, not like a son needing approval, but like a man recognizing truth. I don't know if this marriage can survive honesty, he said. That's not your failure, I replied. That's its foundation showing cracks. That night after he left, I sat alone with my thoughts. I knew what was coming. When control finally slips, desperation follows, and desperation doesn't care about fairness. The real test wasn't over yet, it was just getting closer. The call came at dawn, not from Marcus, from a number I didn't recognize. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times, then I answered. Her voice came through calm, too calm, the kind of calm that's rehearsed. I think we should talk, she said, just you and me. No, I replied without hesitation, a pause, then a sigh. You're making this harder than it needs to be. That's usually what people say when they're losing influence, I said. She didn't like that. You know, she continued, voice smoothing out, none of this had to go this far. Marcus wouldn't be questioning everything if you hadn't planted doubt. I closed my eyes, there it was again, blame disguised as reason. I didn't plant anything, I said. I stopped pretending. Another pause, longer this time. Then her voice dropped, no softness, no performance. You think you've won, she said, but you don't understand what you've started. I felt a chill, not fear, but recognition. What exactly have I started? I asked. You've turned this into a legal situation, she replied, and you should know I've spoken to someone. I leaned back in my chair. About what? About rights, she said. About what it means to live somewhere long enough. About what belongs to who? The silence that followed was thick, so that was it, not marriage, not love, not healing. This had always been about control and possession. You should be careful, she added. Things can get messy when people feel cornered. I ended the call without another word. My hands were steady, but my heart was racing. That morning, I didn't go to the grocery store, didn't water plants, didn't distract myself. I made calls. By noon, I was sitting across from someone who didn't deal in feelings, only facts. I laid everything out, messages, dates, conversations, patterns. She listened carefully, then folded her hands. You're right to take this seriously, she said. What you're describing isn't just family conflict anymore. I nodded. I thought so. She's preparing leverage, she continued. And people who do that don't stop unless they're stopped. That afternoon, Marcus showed up again. He looked shaken. She's been asking questions, he said, about paperwork, about timelines. About what happens if we separate. I told him everything, the call, the tone, the threat beneath the words. His face went pale. She told me you were trying to take everything from us, he said. I'm protecting what was never hers, I replied. He sat down heavily. I don't recognize her anymore. I placed my hand over his. Sometimes you don't see someone clearly until they think they're losing. He swallowed hard. What do we do now? I met his eyes. Now, I said, we stop pretending this is about emotions and deal with it for what it really is. Outside, the day went on like nothing had changed. But inside that room, the truth finally stood fully exposed, and once that happens, there's no turning back. The truth doesn't explode all at once. It settles in slowly, heavy, unavoidable until you can't pretend you don't feel its weight. Marcus stayed that afternoon, didn't pace this time, didn't avoid my eyes. He sat still, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor like he was finally letting himself see the shape of the mess he'd been living in. She's been keeping things from me, he said quietly. Money, messages. Conversations she said never happened. I didn't interrupt. She told me you were trying to control me, he continued. That you wanted me dependent, but the more I think about it, the more I realize she was describing herself. That realization hurt him. I could see it in his face. Mourning doesn't always come after loss, sometimes it comes after clarity. That evening, he went back to the apartment, not to apologize, not to smooth things over, to ask questions. He called me later that night. His voice was different, steady, resolved, stripped of fear. She couldn't answer, he said, not without getting angry. Anger is the last refuge of someone who's been exposed. She accused me of choosing you, he continued. Said if I walk away now, it proves I never loved her. I closed my eyes. That's not love, I said. That's a test with no passing score. He was quiet for a moment, then. I told her I need space, real space. My chest tightened, not with relief but with concern. How did she take it? She didn't, he replied. She said if I leave, she'll make sure everyone knows what kind of mother you are. I felt the sting of that, but it didn't land the way she intended. Let her talk, I said calmly. Truth doesn't need defending, it shows up on its own. The next day, the messages started, not to me, to him, long paragraphs, then short accusations, then apologies again. Then threats disguised as heartbreak. The cycle was obvious now, and once you see the pattern, it loses its power. 3 days later, Marcus showed up with a small suitcase. I can't stay there anymore, he said. Not like this? I nodded and moved aside. He slept on the couch that night like he used to during storms when he was little, said the sound of thunder made him nervous back then. Now it was emotional weather chasing him inside. We talked late into the night about control, about guilt, about how easy it is to confuse sacrifice with love. I don't know if I'm ready to end it, he admitted. You don't have to decide everything today, I told him. Just don't lie to yourself anymore. The next morning he left early for work, and I sat alone knowing something important had shifted again. She had lost access, and people like her don't forgive that, they retaliate. Quietly at first, but not for long. Retaliation doesn't always look like anger, sometimes it looks like paperwork. 2 mornings later, a thick envelope arrived in my mailbox. No return address. Just my name, printed clean and neat like someone wanted it to feel official. My stomach didn't drop, it hardened. Inside were copies, highlighted sections, underlined phrases, notes written in the margins like accusations pretending to be questions. Words like residency, contribution, entitlement. Legal language bent just enough to sound threatening if you didn't know better. She was trying to scare me. I sat at the table and read every page slowly. Not once did my hands shake. When you've lived long enough, you learn the difference between power and bluff. I made one phone call. By that afternoon, I was sitting across from calm eyes and a sharp mind. I laid the envelope on the desk between us. No drama, no panic. She skimmed the pages, then looked up at me. "This is intimidation," she said plainly. "And it's sloppy." I exhaled, tension leaving my shoulders. "She doesn't have a case," she continued, "but she's hoping you won't know that." "I do now," I said. "Good," she replied, "because once someone crosses this line, you stop negotiating emotionally." That night, Marcus came home late. He looked drained. "She showed me documents," he said, "told me she was protecting herself." "From what?" I asked. He shook his head. "From consequences." He sat down heavily. "I think I finally understand what you meant about control." I nodded. "It's loud when it's challenged." He rubbed his temples. "She said if she loses, it's because you poisoned me against her." I reached across the table and took his hand. "No one poisoned you," I said gently. "You woke up." He swallowed hard. "I don't think she ever saw me as a partner," he admitted. "I was a shield, a buffer, a tool." That realization hurt more than anger ever could. Over the next week, lines were drawn, not through shouting, not through blame, through decisions. Marcus moved his things out quietly, didn't announce it, didn't argue, just reclaimed his agency piece by piece. She responded with silence at first. Then came the messages again, this time colder, sharper, less emotional. She wasn't trying to win him back anymore, she was trying to win. And that's when I knew the final break was coming. Not because of love lost, but because control had finally slipped out of her hands. And people who live for control never stop reaching for it until there's nothing left to grab. The breaking point didn't arrive with shouting. It arrived with certainty. Marcus came over one evening carrying the last box from the apartment. Not much inside it, old notebooks, a jacket, a framed photo he hadn't realized he'd missed until he found it shoved in the back of a closet. He set the box down and just stood there for a moment, breathing like he'd been holding it in for weeks. "She filed something today," he said finally. I looked at him. "What kind of something?" "A complaint. Claims she's entitled to compensation. Says she invested time, energy, that the space became hers." I nodded slowly. I'd been expecting this. "She told me if I don't stand with her, she'll make this public," he continued. "Social media, friends, anyone who'll listen. And how do you feel about that?" I asked. He laughed once, short, humorless. "Tired." That word held more truth than anything else he could have said. "I spent months trying to keep everyone calm," he went on, "trying to make peace between two sides that were never equal, and the whole time I was shrinking." I watched him carefully. He looked older somehow, but stronger too. "She keeps saying I owe her," he said. "That leaving means I failed her." "Leaving means you chose yourself," I replied. He nodded. "I told her I'm done." The silence that followed was heavy but clean. He sat down across from me. "I don't know what happens next. I don't know if she'll escalate or disappear. She'll do whatever keeps her feeling powerful," I said, "but it doesn't get to be your responsibility anymore." He swallowed. "I should have protected you sooner." "You're protecting yourself now," I said gently. "That matters." The next few days were tense but quiet, no new messages, no calls, just absence. Then, late one night, my phone buzzed. A single message from her. "I hope you're satisfied." I stared at it for a long time before deleting it. Satisfaction had nothing to do with this. This was about survival, about dignity, about refusing to disappear to make someone else comfortable. A week later, Marcus told me she'd moved out, packed up while he was at work, left the keys on the counter, no goodbye, just gone. He looked at me when he said it like he was waiting to feel something dramatic, but all he felt was relief. I thought I'd be devastated, he admitted, but I just feel free. I reached for his hand. That's how you know. Outside, the season was changing, leaves turning, air sharpening. Endings don't always scream, sometimes they exhale, and in that quiet, something new finally has room to begin. No messages, no rumors. No secondhand updates carried by people who didn't know the whole story, just quiet, the good kind. Marcus started coming by every Sunday again, not out of obligation, out of choice. He'd knock, step inside, and immediately head for the kitchen like muscle memory had finally found its way home. We cooked together, sometimes talked, sometimes didn't. Both were enough. He changed in small ways first. Better sleep, steadier voice. He started therapy not because anyone told him to, but because he wanted to understand how he'd lost himself so slowly without noticing. I thought love meant disappearing, he told me once. Turns out it just means standing honestly. I didn't say I told you so. Some lessons only stick when you discover them alone. As for me, I didn't become softer or harder. I became clearer. I traveled a little. Planted new things in my garden, let friendships deepen instead of stretch thin. I stopped explaining myself to people who only listened to respond. And every now and then, usually late at night, I thought about how close I came to doubting my own voice. That's the part that still chills me, not what she did, but how easily silence almost convinced me I was the problem. One evening, Marcus stayed late. We sat on the porch, the air warm, cicadas loud. He looked at me like he was seeing me again for the first time. You know, he said, if you hadn't stood your ground, I don't think I ever would have. I watched the sky darken. Sometimes the bravest thing a mother can do, I said, is refuse to disappear. He nodded. Life didn't return to what it was before. It became something better, honest, spacious, real. And the lesson I carry with me now, quiet but unshakable, is this: love that asks you to erase yourself isn't love. Peace that requires silence isn't peace. And no matter how old you are, you're allowed to take up space in the life you helped build. Even if that means letting go of what no longer deserves you. Especially then. If this story touched something in you, if any moment felt familiar, heavy, or uncomfortably real, please know you're not alone. Like this video so it reaches someone who needs to hear it. Envelope with arrow. Subscribe to the channel for weekly real-life inspired stories about boundaries, truth, and quiet strength. Speech balloon. Share your thoughts in the comments. Your voice matters more than you think. I read every one. Stories don't end when the video does. They live on in the people who recognize themselves inside them. If you've ever been made to doubt your worth or watched someone you love lose themselves trying to keep the peace, this space is for you. Until next time, trust your voice, protect your peace, and never shrink to make someone else comfortable. Subscribe, stay aware, stay strong.